not as a contractor, but as a community member, why is there not more focus on rail around the country and around the major cities? Indicate underground and railroad systems, which allows them to get away from hydrocarbons dependence. Why not here? I think Chair Patman can answer that one.
I raised my hand to be called on. The answer is this, and I think the two most frequent comments we got in our community input process were, after we'd come up with an initial plan, was there's too much rail, it's too expensive, and there's not enough rail. And the fact of the matter is that I think we're going to be the model for the nation when we get this built out with bus rapid transit. Rail is hugely expensive, particularly underground rail or elevated rail. You know, at ground rail is terribly expensive, and when you depart from ground level, you add exponential costs. So the question is, given that bus rapid transit is working very similarly to rail lines in various localities all over the country, why would we invest in a technology for new corridors that is much more expensive than other available technology that's more adaptable than rail? Rail is not as flexible. You know, the electricity from the catenary wires, we've had our own problems with the catenary wires breaking, and if it's raining, it's a real problem. It hadn't been a huge problem, but it has occasionally occurred. And when you have a dedicated corridor and you have buses that simulate rail cars and you have the amenities of rail, off-vehicle payment, platforms that are flush with the doors opening, an ability to board at different parts of the car, and a high capacity carrying capacity, stations, not stops, it's really going to be very similar to rail for 1/3 to 1/2 of the cost. And as a result, as Roberto told you, I'll just give you an example. I don't know if I can even get this slide back, but probably not. But Roberto showed you the slide on the university corridor, for example. Well, when the university corridor was supposed to be a rail line, which ultimately foundered due to a confluence of circumstances, it went from downtown out to Hillcroft. Now, for the same amount or less money, we can take the bus rapid transit all the way out to West Chase and wrap it around up to Tidwell, expanding our service to many more people. So it's interesting that we get that question because it's something we weighed very heavily. In fact, I will tell you very frankly that when we first brought a plan that focused on bus rapid transit to the mayor, he said the same thing. He said, he looked at it and he said, well, I don't think there's enough rail in this plan. This was a couple of years ago. And, you know, that's really the top of the line service. And I said to him, and a number of us were there with him, actually, you have what's known in the industry as rail bias, because bus rapid transit in the last 15 years has really come on. It's working very beautifully where it's working. And it happened that shortly after that, he went on a trade mission down to Buenos Aires, where they have a very, very robust bus rapid transit service, and they love it. And he could literally, he visited it, he could see the way it operated, he could literally look out of his hotel room and see people boarding it, and it's worked very beautifully. And he came back and said, I see what you mean. So we did a whole lot of due diligence on it. We will have probably, don't you think it's fair to say, Tom, that we'll have the most extensive BRT system in the country when we have it, or is that? It'll be pretty close if it's not the case. I think it's the case, just from, it's always hedging his bets, you know. Troy. Oh, yeah, it's also a lot quicker to install than rail. And hopefully somewhat less disruptive than rail to install, so that you don't have quite as many impacts during the construction process. Anybody want to comment on that in addition? Troy, Sanjay, anybody from the staff? So I think bus rapid transit is the way to go. We do have a little bit of rail, as you can see, and that is because where you have an existing line, and those two lines are so close, the green and the purple, to Hobby Airport, that it made sense to join those and take them down so that people from the convention center had a one-seat ride to the airport. Not to mention, we just kind of close that loop. Those kind of go out to a destination and then they stop. Well, here they go to Hobby, and we're going to have a park and ride nearby so that we serve all those suburban areas that can drive in. And then it made a whole lot of sense to take the red line, which is one of the most successful lines in the country, by the way, in terms of riders per mile, up to the North Shepherd Transit Center, where you have all these cross currents of transit routes. So any other thoughts on that for me? And then I'll turn it back to Roberto. Thank you all so much.